Welcome back. Let's get you this report now on the latest Sero-Survey by the ICMR. It shows that about 67%, that's two-thirds of Indians, have developed antibodies against the virus. Don't rejoice just yet, because we're far from really ensuring or attaining herd immunity. Sneha Mordani explains the highlights of the survey.
The ICMR's latest Sero-Survey brings some good news. It says two-thirds of Indians have antibodies. But then comes a warning. A third of India's population is still at risk. So, the threat is very much there. This was the fourth Sero-Survey carried out by ICMR. And this is what its findings were. 67.6% Indians have developed antibodies against COVID. Two-thirds of India's population has antibodies. 40 crore Indians are still at risk.
So the implications of this large Sero-Survey done as round number 4 clearly show that there is a ray of hope. But there is no room for complacency. We must maintain COVID-appropriate behavior and community engagement.
Another encouraging dimension to the latest Sero-Survey is the steep increase in antibodies among children.
A large proportion of children across the different socioeconomic strata have already developed infection without them developing severe disease. Like in one of the survey in Delhi, around 80% of children in particular area were with antibodies, so they are protected.
But again, experts have sounded a note of caution on the figures.
We have 1/3 of our population, that is 40 crore people, who are still susceptible to developing COVID-19 infection, and 50% of the children have not yet developed antibodies. So instead of relaxing because the numbers of active infections are not very high and releasing the lockdown, we should focus on aggressive vaccination drive. We still have 1/10 of the healthcare workers who have not yet been vaccinated, and that is the gap we need to fill.
Presence of antibodies does not guarantee immunity against COVID infection, especially with the different variants. Therefore, COVID-safe behavior must continue at least until 70 to 80% of the country is fully vaccinated. As advised by ICMR itself, while this study is a ray of hope, there is no room for complacency at this time.
A Sero-Survey gives a broad picture of India's situation on the COVID front. What is clear is that the country has a long way to go in the battle against the virus. With Sneha Mordani in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
And let me break down now for you the big takeaways from the Sero-Survey by the ICMR. It's the fourth such Sero-Survey that's been conducted by the body. And let's tell you exactly what are the findings. 67.6% of Indians have developed antibodies against COVID. That is essentially two-thirds of Indians who have been surveyed, and they've had antibodies, which is good news right now. But what it also shows is that 40 crore Indians are still very much vulnerable, and that shows you why we simply cannot afford to let our guard down. 50% of kids between the age of 6 to 17 have antibodies. Experts have been saying that Indian kids have developed a good sense of immunity against COVID. Now, these are the highlights of the Sero-Survey, and it clearly shows you why we can't afford to let our guard down. While antibodies have been developed by some amount of the population, remember that antibodies are temporary. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of